police officers arrived at an apartment complex in Miramar, Florida, expecting to follow up on a missing persons case. Instead, they found themselves standing outside the home of a teenage girl whose name had suddenly become central to a brutal murder investigation. Her mother had no idea what was unfolding. She was stopped outside the apartment and told that her daughter's name had come up in connection with a violent incident. Within hours, detectives would uncover a case far more disturbing than anyone first imagined. The victim was 18-year-old Dwight Grant, known to friends and family as DJ. He was a Miramar High School student described as quiet, respectful, responsible, and deeply loved. He wasn't known for causing trouble. He didn't have a reputation for violence. He wasn't the kind of teenager who disappeared without warning or got pulled into dangerous situations. That was what made the first signs so terrifying. On Sunday evening, DJ's mother realized something was very wrong. Her son had not come home, and that was completely unlike him. DJ always kept in touch. He answered calls. He let people know where he was. But now, there was nothing. No response. No explanation. No sign of where he had gone. At first, his family hoped there was some simple explanation. Maybe his phone had died. Maybe he had gone somewhere unexpectedly. Maybe he was with friends. But as the hours dragged on, fear took over. Calls went unanswered. Nobody had seen him. Friends didn't know where he was. By Monday morning, the worry had become panic. Then came another chilling detail. DJ failed to show up for school. For a teenager like him, that was a huge red flag. Teachers noticed immediately. Friends noticed. His family knew this was no ordinary disappearance. The people who loved him began searching everywhere they could think of. They checked places he might have gone. They called classmates. They drove through neighborhoods. They handed out flyers. Every hour without answers made things worse. Police got involved and began speaking to people at Miramar High School. They questioned students one by one, trying to understand whether anyone knew who DJ had been with, whether he had mentioned plans, whether there had been any conflict brewing beneath the surface. At that point, the smallest clue could have mattered. Everyone kept saying the same thing about DJ. He was a good kid. Calm. Focused. Not a troublemaker. He spent much of his free time gaming and staying to himself. There was nothing in his behavior that suggested he would suddenly vanish, let alone end up dead. But by Tuesday afternoon, the worst possible outcome became reality. Around 2 p.m., while officers were canvassing an area near Sherman Circle North, they noticed bloodstains on the sidewalk near an apartment building. Following that trail led them to a horrifying discovery. Hidden in the bushes near the complex was the body of a young man. It was DJ. He had been there the whole time, shockingly close to home. The scene was brutal. Investigators found 2 fatal wounds, one to the chest and one to the neck. A knife was recovered nearby, hidden in the bushes. The area was immediately sealed off as officers worked to preserve evidence and confirm the victim's identity. For DJ's family, it was an unimaginable nightmare. The son they had been searching for had been murdered and left just outside the place he lived. In a quiet, close-knit community like Miramar, news like that spread fast. Once word got out that a teenage boy had been found stabbed to death, people began coming forward with information. Tips poured in. Detectives knew they had to move quickly. Then one woman walked into police headquarters carrying something that would crack the case wide open. She had her niece's phone. The woman explained that after seeing news reports about the body found near Sherman Circle, she became alarmed by messages she had seen in a private group chat on her niece's phone. The chat involved teenagers from school, and the messages were disturbing. One girl in particular had been saying alarming things, talking tough, hinting at violence, bragging in ways that sounded too dark to ignore. The woman wasn't claiming she knew exactly what happened, but she felt strongly enough that she couldn't stay silent. That decision changed everything. When detectives reviewed the messages, 3 names quickly emerged as central figures in the case: 17-year-old Andre Dexter Clemens, 16-year-old Jacine Smith, and 17-year-old Christy Parisian. Within hours, investigators moved to track them down. The first stop was Christy's apartment. Police arrived and informed her mother that they needed to secure the apartment because Christy's name had come up during the investigation. Her mother was stunned. She wasn't allowed to go back inside while officers waited for a search warrant. Standing outside, confused and scared, she mentioned that Christy had left a voicemail earlier referencing the murder. That comment immediately caught the detectives' attention. They retrieved the phones so they could listen to the message. By now, police had already spoken to Christy at the station, but her mother's statement reinforced that Christy knew much more than an average teenager hearing neighborhood gossip. She was tied to this case in a direct and deeply troubling way. The next teen detectives found was Jacine Smith. They located her later that night outside her family's apartment with her mother present. At first, Jacine tried to speak carefully. She suggested that she had only been told bits and pieces. She claimed she thought she was helping with a fight, not a murder. But the more she spoke, the more the truth began slipping out. According to Jacine, the person directing everything was Andre Clemens. She said Andre told her there was a problem involving a girl. DJ had allegedly gotten involved with Andre's ex-girlfriend, and Andre was angry. He wanted backup for what he described as a fight. Jacine said he told her to dress in all black, wear gloves, and come with him. He knew the layout of the apartment complex, including where the cameras were positioned and how to move around without being easily seen. That alone showed planning. This was not some random confrontation that spiraled out of control. The black clothing, the gloves, the route chosen to avoid cameras, the effort to lure DJ into a specific location. Every piece pointed to premeditation. Jacine said she agreed because Andre was her friend and because she thought it would only be a fight. But even in her own telling, there were warning signs everywhere. Andre had a detailed plan. He instructed them exactly what to wear. He told them what not to bring. He controlled where they would walk and where they would wait. And Christy had a role too. According to Jacine, Christy was the bait. She said Christy had been communicating with DJ and was used to lure him to the stairwell. Once everyone was in position, Christy made a call and gave the signal. That was when DJ arrived. Jacine and Andre were already waiting. When DJ got there, Andre confronted him. At first, DJ tried to run. That was when Jacine admitted she helped tackle him to the ground. She claimed she thought the weapon Andre had was only meant to intimidate him. But that explanation didn't hold up for long. Because then came one of the most horrifying parts of the confession. Jacine admitted that once DJ was on the ground, Andre asked for the weapon back and said he was going to kill him. Not scare him. Not rough him up. Kill him. And even then, Jacine did not walk away. She did not intervene. She did not run for help. Instead, she admitted she held DJ down while Andre attacked him. At first, she referred vaguely to a weapon, avoiding the specific word. But detectives already knew DJ had died from sharp force injuries. When they pressed harder, the truth came out. It wasn't just a knife. There was also a sword. That detail made the case even more chilling. A sword is not something a person casually forgets is part of the plan. It's not subtle. It's not easily concealed the way a pocket knife might be. The presence of a sword made it almost impossible to believe Jacine had no idea this was intended to be a killing. She tried to soften her role, saying Andre had taken out a small weapon first, then later used another blade. But her own words exposed her. She described holding DJ's legs and torso while Andre stabbed him. She described hearing DJ plead for his life. She described him fading in and out, realizing he was dying. And still it continued. At one point, DJ reportedly begged for it to end. He knew he wasn't going to survive. He pleaded to be choked out instead. But Andre kept going. By then, any claim that this had been a simple fight was completely gone. Jacine continued trying to present herself as someone manipulated by Andre, someone who got in too deep and became terrified. But then she let another devastating detail slip. She mentioned that before the attack, Andre had told her this would be the first person he had ever killed. That sentence changed the entire meaning of everything she had said. Because if Andre said this would be his first killing before the attack happened, then Jacine knew it was supposed to be a killing. She knew long before DJ ever arrived. Her earlier story, that she thought it would just be a fight, collapsed right there in front of detectives. Now investigators could see the shape of the truth much more clearly. Andre was the mastermind. Christie lured DJ in. Jacine helped carry out the ambush. All three had roles. All three had knowledge. All three were tied to what happened in that stairwell. And the physical evidence backed it up. Security camera footage from the apartment complex showed the three teens dressed in black moving through the area. Cameras captured them approaching the stairwell where DJ was attacked. Footage also supported key parts of the aftermath, including the movement of DJ's body. Investigators were able to match much of what had been described in the confessions and messages to what the cameras recorded. After the attack, the teens dragged DJ's body into the bushes. Then they tried to destroy the evidence. They gathered the bloody clothes and weapons-related items into a bag and returned to Jacine's apartment complex. There, in an open grassy area visible to surrounding apartments, they set fire to the bloody clothing using gasoline. It was a reckless mistake. A security guard saw them. Another resident noticed him too. Witnesses later described the scene: two girls standing nearby, visibly shaken, and a boy moving around the fire, adding gasoline. They may not have seen every detail clearly in that moment, but the behavior was suspicious enough to stick in their minds. Once the investigation zeroed in on the three teens, those witness accounts became powerful corroboration. Police also seized their phones and reviewed the messages between them. Those messages undercut the story that this was a spontaneous confrontation. The text showed intent, coordination, and a mindset far darker than teenage drama spiraling out of hand. This was not just jealousy. It was planning. It was conspiracy. It was murder. Within days, all three teens were arrested. Jacine Smith, Christy Parisian, and Andre Clemens were each charged as adults. All three faced charges related to tampering with evidence and conspiracy to commit murder. Christy and Jacine were also charged with second-degree murder. Eventually, both pleaded guilty. Each was sentenced to 25 years in prison followed by 10 years of probation. Andre, identified as the mastermind and the person who delivered the fatal blows, faced the most serious charge of all, first-degree premeditated murder. On February 18, 2025, Andre Clemens pleaded guilty. He was sentenced to 40 years in prison followed by lifetime probation. And that was the legal end of the case. But for DJ's family, there was no real ending. What makes this story hit so hard is how senseless it was. DJ wasn't a violent person. He wasn't looking for trouble. By every account, he was loyal, caring, and kind. The people who knew him described someone who would be there for others in a heartbeat. And yet he was lured into a trap and killed over jealousy, obsession, and a twisted need for control. Three teenagers made a choice that destroyed multiple lives in a single night. Andre chose revenge over rejection. Christy chose deception over honesty. Jacine chose participation over conscience. And DJ paid for all of it with his life. Cases like this are especially haunting because they begin with something that sounds almost ordinary: high school drama, jealousy over a relationship, teenagers talking in group chats, friends agreeing to back each other up. But underneath that ordinary surface was something far more dangerous. A fantasy of violence. A plan. A willingness to treat a human life like something disposable. That is what makes this case so chilling. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a sudden explosion of rage in one wild moment. It was a trap laid out piece by piece, with clothing chosen, roles assigned, cameras avoided, and evidence burned afterward. And yet, despite all the planning, the truth still came out. A worried mother noticed her son was missing. A community kept talking. A woman trusted her instincts and brought police the phone. Witnesses paid attention. Investigators kept pulling at the loose threads. And in the end, the entire plan unraveled. DJ Grant should have been growing into adulthood, finishing school, building his future, and living the life his family imagined for him. Instead, his name became attached to one of the most disturbing teen murder cases in the community. He was only 18. Loved, missed, and taken in one of the cruelest ways imaginable.